Hi, and welcome to another episode of Kasper On BI. Today, we're going to talk about something that is very important. Today, we're going to talk about a center of excellence. And a center of excellence is something that is usually getting set up in larger organizations to help users make sense out of the data, to get more out of the data. It is necessarily not something technical, it is something organizational. So, where can I find data? How can I get the best things done with my data? What are some tips and tricks? How do we do these things inside of my organization? And maybe we can build a community of people doing the same things. As a guest today, we have Alex Garcia. And Alex has set up a center of excellence in a pretty large organization. And he's been running it for several years. So it's going to be very interesting. And we're going to listen to his tips and tricks on how he does these things. So with that, let's go to the episode. So, hi, Alex. Welcome to the show. It's super great to have you here. I'm very honored. Maybe you can share a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Kasper. It's a real pleasure to be invited by you to this show. A little bit about myself. So, I've been working in the IT industry for 18 years. No, actually 20 if selling printers and copiers qualify as IT industry.
I think it does.
So I've been 18. It does. Yeah. I'm sure it did. And half of my career has been, most of my career has been always on the data space. Half of my career has been building backend and frontend applications for transactional systems on the top of AS400, all IBM technology. And front end with desktop applications. And then the second part of my has been more focused on the business intelligence space, where I've been business intelligence specialist and a BI manager as I am these days.
Great. And so let's go talk a little bit about Power BI. So maybe you can share a little bit about the journey that your company has done with Power BI. I know, so we know each other based off this, right? We've worked together, me on the Power BI side of things, and you're working your organization. So maybe, and you've been at it for quite some time with Power BI. So maybe you can share a little bit of that journey.
Yeah, so thanks Ted, for that question. Before we get into matter, what I need to say is that obviously this conversation between us is kind of a professional to professional conversation. What I'm going to share in this conversation is based on my entire expertise, my knowledge of Power BI, my knowledge within my current company, but also my knowledge from prior companies and other customers, other professionals that I talk to. And all the opinions that I'm going to share here are mine and mine alone. And I don't represent neither my company, my current company, or any other past employer that I had. Everything that I share is mine. Successes, failures, bad jokes, mainly those, everything mine.
All right, makes sense. Yeah.
And regarding
go ahead.
So you were asking about the Power BI journey. So look, my personal perception, and as I've seen also with other customers, there is kind of a pattern for those that started the journey with Power BI a few years ago, because also the timing does matter. So a few years ago, we started with Power BI, and at the beginning, what we could see is a niche adoption. So before the platform, it's centrally supported and forced to or made the standard, you could see already, because Power BI already was part of the Office 365 toolset, there was already initial adoption without any central guidance or whatsoever, just because it was available to them. Licensing, I think that has always been really good from Microsoft, because it's affordable.
So they just picked it up, like they just found it themselves and downloaded it and start playing?
Exactly. One day, get up and realize that in certain countries, they've purchased more than 200 pro licenses just because they needed those. That time, we're talking about 3 premium days. And they were using that for their own benefit. And funny enough, I think that there was also another pattern, which is this was picked up mainly by countries or business areas that usually don't have the large budgets that are required for IT managed business intelligence solution, traditional solutions where you have your SQL Server, your SQL Server analysis services, pay a lot of money to a consultancy organization to develop that in 6 months. Instead of all that, business identified the massive number of new opportunities that Power BI gave them, and mainly is the fast development that they could do. Business analysts that understand the data, knows where to get the data from, plus it in Power BI, build some reports, and they can provide answers to the questions that are relevant to them at that point in time, not 3 months or 6 months later. It's at that point in time, and that gave the competitive edge for the business to react themselves and not depend on the IT teams.
So it kind of went. So we kind of see this approach like it's went bottom up, right?
So yes, it went bottom up. Once this organization settled the plans to entirely move to the cloud, obviously they needed to find a cloud solution for a reporting tool. And actually, Power BI was considered only as a reporting tool. Obviously, we know today it's much more than that. It's a complete business intelligence suite. And at that point in time, we needed that cloud tool. And once they identified, obviously, with the help of Microsoft, that was the best choice that we could make, then there was a central sponsorship for Power BI, and people started creating more solutions from the IT perspective. There was, and because of the timing, there was a period of time, I'm going to say year and a half, where we faced challenges because when you start deploying any kind of new software, you also need to manage the change in your business. They are used to do things in a certain way, and you're asking them to do in a different way. And even if this different way has advantages that they never saw before, it's still a change. And what it was difficult as well to manage during that 12-18 months is that in some cases, Power BI was replacing legacy tools. And then you are in the realm of the comparison. Your new tool doesn't do what the older tool was doing. And obviously you could defend that saying, well, it might not that the specific detail, but there are plenty of other benefits that will add value to the business that you're not considering. And they will say, yes, but I'm losing what I was doing before. And that was also in a moment or in a period where Power BI wasn't as mature as it is today. It has some kind of polishing still to be done. And it was very, very difficult. Past that time, and obviously with all the solutions that are created during that time, not only by IT teams, but also by business analysts, business users, there is a momentum already created. There is a critical mass of expertise and adoption and visibility. And at some point in time, the tool wasn't as questioned as it was before. And also remember specifically one point in which actually it was in the Microsoft Applications Summit in Seattle. And those days being immersed in the kind of in technology talks, I realized I am approaching all these conversations in the wrong way. At some point, I felt empowered to say, look, you need to let that go, because if you don't adopt Power BI, your business is losing all these benefits. Performance is losing benefits of self-service, which we have not really seen self-service as in other legacy tools. Power BI has true business self-service and plenty of other things that you don't have. So stop thinking about the old terms. Think about all the benefits that are there for you to realize. And if you're not realizing them, perhaps you're not the person for the job. Which I wasn't saying exactly to directors and MVPs, but that was the spirit. The spirit.
So how long did it take you for, like, so you realized this at one point, and actually you're one of many customers who were at the same inflection point, really. But you realized it, but your organization might not be ready. Your managers might not be ready. The rest of the IT organization might not be ready for the same conversation because they are still in the mindset, okay, we need to do it the way that we've always been doing it. And self-service is a bit more a difficult discussion to have because are we going to just let them go? And what are we going to do? So how did you have that conversation?
Obviously, it was not only one conversation. We have lots of adopters and supporters, but we had as well very loud people in opposition, not truly in opposition, but with resilience to change just because Power BI didn't have this and that. And it was just changing the tone of the conversation with those people and assuming that Power BI can deliver a lot of value, no matter what you have done with other legacy tools. I see that change, although I cannot really tell you started and finished these days, was really fast.
It's a process. It's a process.
It was, but it was really fast because we went through all that process, all those 18 months, suffering all those challenges, getting things done from Microsoft perspective, helping Microsoft to release certain features that were required by our business. And there was a shift in mentality. Also supported by the fact that they were already large scale and small scale solutions already deployed, plenty of users using Power BI as report consumers, but also plenty of users creating content in Power BI and sharing content in Power BI. So I would say that it was in possibly 2-3 months, all that changed. Before those 2-3 months, I was almost every day in conversations, Power BI cannot do this, or we had this better in some of the tools. In 2-3 months, those conversations disappeared.
And so, what do you think was the reason behind it?
So, reason behind is that from my side, from the Power BI Center of Excellence, we supported plenty of IT projects. Most of our time was invested in fighting their issues, giving them the right way of doing things, because there was also a lack of expertise, to be honest, and giving them workarounds to do things, basically helping them to be successful. And once you collect a number of successes, that supports makes those sort of conversations much easier. So I think that accumulating all the successes during that challenging period was what made things easier moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of was saying it during the intro too. Like a lot of the work around Power BI is not technical work; it's organizational. It's making people feel comfortable by using the tools and understanding the challenge. Especially, I mean, if you are an Excel user, I mean, using Excel in a certain way for so many years, it is hard to look at it differently. If you've been using your traditional reports and your pages and pages and pages and tables of things, doing it a different way is difficult. And I mean, someone once told me, like when I just joined Microsoft, there was a designer who told me, change is bad unless it's great. And that is just, it's a difficult discussion. So really to recap a little bit. So the problem of rolling out Power BI in the organization was that mindset, right? To change, obviously, you were pretty early in the game too. So Power BI has grown with you in that time. So there was like two problems. Power BI in the beginning days, it was missing features that you were needing, but also the organization had a mind shift. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. And also there is a more subjective component, which is because most of the time these large scale type of solutions, I don't speak with the final users. I speak with people that represent users representatives. So there are a few number of layers, and I need to gain the confidence and to be rock solid, saying Power BI can deliver the value and the features, not the features, the functionality that you require. Although you might need to think about that functionality in a different way, I need to be convinced that I need to convince and empower the next layer, and then the next layer need to do the same for the next layer until they can reach to the users and be comfortable saying to the users, we're moving away from all the tools. You're using this because we know, and I'm going to demonstrate you that it's going to give you benefit and value.
All right. That makes total sense. So maybe let's go to center of excellence, because I think that's also one of the key parts of the success, I think. So what is a center of excellence in your mind?
So, okay, I'm going to give you the definition that I've minted in the last 3 years, which I believe serves for for-profit organizations, non-profit organizations, and even for government organizations. Basically, my concept of Power BI Center of Excellence is that it is a group with the right expertise and focus that is fully dedicated to maximize the benefits of the technology alone and the technology combined with other technologies. I think that's kind of even slightly vague description, because it doesn't say what the Power BI Center of Excellence does. It's maximizing the benefits. And in this definition, there are a couple of key components. One is focus and expertise, because you can have a generalist IT team supporting, SQL servers, Azure, Power BI. But Power BI requires knowledge. You need to know all the risks, all the opportunities in Power BI to leverage the technology in its maximum. So if you're a generalist and you learn all those things, you become a specialist in Power BI. Well, then why not start with a specialist team? And then the other key component in this definition is maximize the benefits. Different organizations might approach their data culture in different ways, and there might be benefits that it's in their spirit or in the mindset to benefit to realize. And what is key is that the Center of Excellence needs to understand how they want to leverage the technology, how they want to use the technology to deliver value to the business. And to that, you have different answers. Depending on your answers, you are going to know what your Center of Excellence should do. You could have a case where the way in which you're going to deliver value to the business is by developing excellent, outstanding applications. Well, you know that the focus for your Center of Excellence should be developing and have a high quality expertise. Actually, in my case, I don't do any type of development. My responsibility within my Power BI Center of Excellence is more around features, conversations with Microsoft, the strategy of the tool and the platform in our organization, and also defining how we want to get that benefit from Power BI. So I don't do development, others do. And what I do is to give them everything that they need so they can excel in that development, in that delivery to the business.
So, I mean, but what does that concretely look like? Like, let's say I'm a finance guy in your organization, and I have loads of data that is coming from some SAP system, let's say. I know I have a exec meeting that I have to present data to. What do I do? How do I get in touch with you? How do I know where to find someone that can tell me tips and tricks and whatever?
Well, one of the things that's a good question. One of the things that I see that most of the Center of Excellence should do is to take care of training, guidelines, and best practices, and make sure that before you are in that need, they are open to you. So how, for instance, how we have done that in terms of visibility of all this material and availability, and kind of being able to reach directly to the Center of Excellence, we created a Yammer community. This Yammer community today has 1,800 members that have joined the community on their own volition. They have not been forced. Nobody signed them automatically. They wanted to join.
That's probably a key too.
Yes, and in that community, they have access to us and to other community members, and we broadcast all the relevant information. And in terms of best practices and guidelines, what is important to know is that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Best practices and guidelines are going to be, 90 or 95% common to all organizations. Obviously, you might have your own details, but whatever Microsoft has already published, whatever any of the Microsoft experts outside Microsoft, Power BI experts outside Microsoft have created, that might already be valid. From the Center of Excellence, we only need to give it a structure. Obviously, you cannot dump a kind of 100 documents to a user. You need to tell them, well, if your problems are this, or if you are starting your Power BI journey, this is what I would do, and this is why I would do it. Sometimes explaining why a best practice or a guideline is as important as providing the guideline, because if I tell you, Kasper, this is how you would do, this is best practice to implement row level security in your Power BI reports. Most of the users, most of the business analysts don't even know what is row level security.
Yeah.
Actually, there are cases where they are creating one report for one country and exactly the same report, but different instance of the report for a different country. They don't know that they can have one single report and share securely with users. So you have to explain them. The row level security, first of all, is simple to implement, and you will be able to control what data your users are going to see. So that is very important. We're making things easier and understandable, and making sure that they understand what is really important in all this Power BI space, because for good or bad, Power BI scope is really, really large.
Yeah, makes sense. And then, so maybe not an interesting question. I actually have two questions, but let's start with one. So how do they know that they're like, in the case that someone goes ahead and downloads Power BI desktop and just goes ahead and plays with things, how do they know you exist? Is it word to word or?
That actually has worked a lot. During the early days, one thing is that we had a very strong sponsorship. Frequently, we were asked to present and even to train in terms of Power BI. I have a few occasions in which I trained or demonstrated Power BI to more than 1,000 users in one day. That is because there was the relevant person asking for that demonstration. And you can imagine, obviously, my organization is a really large organization with more than 100,000 users. But the fact that you can access to thousands of them in one day, that is massive. So it's all moving parts. Advocates in every country knows that the Power BI Center of Excellence exists, because we have invested time in talking to anyone that had questions about Power BI. The German community exists. So even if you don't know that the Center of Excellence exists in my organization, I'm sure that you know somebody that works close to you that knows the existence of the Center of Excellence. And after these 3 years, I think that we are well known in our organization. I'm not going to say that everybody knows us, but I would be surprised if somebody's working day in and day out in Power BI and don't know that Power BI Center of Excellence exists.
Actually, that you've kind of nicely put into the next question. So you talk about sponsorship. Like, I think, like, I'm also talking to other customers and I'm talking to people that I know of, and they have a hard time convincing they need to have a center of excellence or something to help people along, because there's no money, there's no nothing. How did that conversation go, and how are you able to get, because you need XX sponsorship. Without it, it's not going to happen. So what were some of the arguments, or what some of the things that made this happen? Because, I mean, you're pretty successful with this, so that's really good. But I think a lot of people actually are jealous of the way you set this up.
So look, there are two different things. One is sponsorship for the technology and the platform, and that I had it all along. I don't have to work a bit. I didn't have to sweat it. When I created my Power BI Center of Excellence, the adoption and the support for Power BI as a platform, as a tool, it was already there from the very top of the organization, which made things really easy, to be honest, in terms of the adoption of the tool. However, that's exec support for the Center of Excellence is a different story. At the beginning, I had support just because somebody wanted to have this dedicated focus to all these delivery teams. He knew that there were going to be challenges, new technology, new mindset. It's better to have a dedicated team to support it. Now, that was the last time that I had kind of the sponsorship without sweating it. What happened later is the number of users that we have in our organization has been growing non-stop. Number of reports, number of premium capacities, and so the number of solutions that Power BI supports today is massive. And we needed to fight to make sure that we have the right size of the team and the right skills as well, because that is important. You cannot have in a Power BI Center of Excellence where expertise is a given. You cannot have kind of beginners to support you, because it's not going to work. And we were very objective and very methodical in terms of building the business case for the Center of Excellence. So basically, there are lots of areas in which we believe attention is needed. Okay, so it is architecture. Power BI today opens a myriad of new possibilities to build things faster and cheaper. But if you don't have a dedicated team, you are going to lose those opportunities. You may be spending a lot of money that you could not in kind of all architectures for certain solutions. Then there is the area of security. If you leave the platform with no security controls, I mean, beyond what the standard settings that you can have, you might be at risk of leaking data just because you not put in place the right governance. And there is a risk, and there is kind of a monetary penalty that you can have, which is, I believe, 5% of the turnaround of your global turnaround of the organization if personal data is leaked.
GDPR,
and that is massive. Yeah, exactly. So we listed a number of things that we thought needed attention. We scored those things based on how important we believe they are. What is the business value? Sometimes you cannot really measure with numbers the value, but you can explain what the value is. And also what is very important is what is the risk if you don't have this. And that was a really good work. So we could help our leaders to kind of take a call and say, well, we believe then that the right size of the team is actually, and alongside those tasks, I was defining the number of FTEs that I needed for kind of be able to focus on those tasks. That made the decision on the kind of the size of the Center of Excellence much easier for them. And they knew what they were risking by getting or not getting. So that I think that's kind of the more objective approach. Obviously, to get to that point, I needed to work in the Power BI Center of Excellence with reduced resources for at least 2 years to gain that knowledge, to understand all those different areas. Because otherwise, if you don't have that information, how are you going to be able to present the case? But I think that it's been a really good job and has yielded very nice benefits for the Center of Excellence, which we aim to translate in benefits for the business.
Yeah, shareholder value.
Exactly.
So, and that kind of brings us to the next question. So what are some of the roles and responsibilities of the team? Because you were talking about training, you were talking about community, you were talking about GDPR, talking about security. So what are the things that your Center of Excellence team does?
So I would assume that almost in any organization, Center of Excellence should consider certain areas. As said, the area of architecture, so defining the guidelines on how to build applications, and also the methodology to kind of for the code and all that stuff. Providing those guidelines, not necessarily to make code review, because we want to make this agile, but at least we need to tell people how to do things. That is important, because if you don't do that, they will do in whatever way they want. They might not foresee potential issues. And that means that sooner rather than later, you will have to rework your solution. Your customers or your users are unhappy. You need to spend more money, or you need to spend more money in infrastructure because your solution is suboptimal and needs a larger server, larger infrastructure, AIS or Power BI Premium. to support what could have been done with smaller infrastructure. So the chance to lose money because of rework and all these things is high. And on the top of that, you have unhappy users. And those are opportunities that you shouldn't really miss. I mean, you lose money, but you can, let's say, recover it in some ways. Losing the confidence of your users, that's much harder to get back.
Yeah,
so architecture is one area.
So, and also with architecture, do you mean like are you telling them also like where to find data sources and things like this, and or you're creating data silos or data marts, or that's something IT a different team does, and you just tell them where it is, or you don't do it at all?
So, for instance, my opinion is if Power BI is kind of the center of your business intelligence solutions, Power BI Center of Excellence could take care of that. But if really your data is going to be spread across different platforms, I'm talking about Azure, I'm talking about Power BI, I'm talking about possibly other third-party tools like, I don't know, whatever your HR system is or your sales system is.
Yeah.
Power BI Center of Excellence shouldn't take care of that. Should be a specific data expertise team who takes care of, well, their own best practices and guidelines on how to ingest data, how to model data, how to protect and share the data. They should take care of a proper cataloging of the tool, make sure that people don't have to reinvent the wheel, and things are they can find the relevant data if it exists and is cataloged already. That should be done by a different team. When I say architecture, I mean more about architectural patterns, when to use certain Azure components, when to use certain Power BI components, how to create your Power BI solutions, things like whether you need partitions or not, depending on your data volumes. Best practice, for instance, you should always have your Power BI data set different from your reports, so you manage both things in different places. And all that stuff, really, more than giving specific guidance on where to find their data.
All right, makes sense. So that's one, architecture.
Architecture is one. I'm going to mix two, which is governance, platform management. So governance, I think there should be something. Governance is, on one hand, to protect your organization, to protect your platform, to give assurance, but also governance should be aimed to help users and to help business users creating content. And I always thought in governance in such a way where, yes, they might be obliged to do certain things, but they will get stuff in return. And that stuff in return is timely information and guidelines on what to do in certain scenarios. So it needs to be kind of light governance. You shouldn't be spending, hours fulfilling forms and questionnaires, because that's going to put you off. You're not going to get started in Power BI. You need to spend a week filling forms. Needs to be light and needs to be helpful. Needs to be helpful for both sides. That is in terms of governance. You can govern your solution. So you could just say, okay, Power BI is like SharePoint. You can create your workspaces, you can put the data you want, you can share the reports that you want, and we don't know what you're doing. That might work for a while. But you lose the opportunity of classifying your reports. If the system goes down, if there is a problem, you don't know, as platform owner, you don't know what is the impact to your organization. So some governance understanding so you can govern your solutions, but also you can govern your users by understanding the people are owning solutions and creating content. If you know who they are, you can timely communicate to them all the relevant information that they might need. If tomorrow there is a feature that you want to be used in a specific way, you can just send an email to all the, 100 or 1,000 or 5,000 report authors and make them aware of that. So they don't misuse the feature or they don't miss the feature.
So you actually reach out to people?
Yes.
inside your organization? Okay, you tell them like, okay, you probably should do it differently, or hey, we've been monitoring the environment and we're seeing that you're doing this. You should probably do it the other way around. So also, it's not just reactive. People come to you, you do trainings, but also like proactive.
It's proactive, but also I would say that it's more proactive in the other area that I'm going to mention for platform management. So in terms of platform management, Power BI shared capacity, Power BI Pro as others call it. I don't really need to worry about that. If a user tells me, well, Alex, tomorrow I'm going to deploy 10 reports that are going to be used by 10,000 users every day. I don't care. It's shared capacity. It's Microsoft's problem, isn't it? It's in a farm of servers in the data center, and I'm assuming that it can absorb overnight that amount of extra workload. However, if they say, I want to place this new solution to be used by 10,000 users every day in one of your premium capacities, I would be sweating bullets because I know that they are going to take the system down. So managing the platform is much more important for the premium space rather than the shared capacity. And that is as well something that we focus a lot in.
So you manage it?
Is,
not because
yes.
I hear some customers where they have the business users, the business units who buy the capacity, they also manage it. You manage it for them too, or you help them.
So there is no reserved capacity, or I'm going to say this in this way. I strongly believe that the best way in which any company can have a cost-effective premium platform is by sharing capacities with different solutions. Now, because let's say that in any given company, you are kind of finance department that take care of the finance reporting in Europe or I don't know in South Asia.
Yeah.
You are going to use your premium capacity, let's say early hours in the morning to reload data. During your business hours in Southeast Asia, whatever it is, it's going to have a massive usage for which you might need to have a pretty sizable SKU. And then during your night hours, your premium capacity is going to be idle. You are wasting money, really. And the fact that you're not sharing that with others doesn't mean that you are going to be always protected. However, if you share that premium capacity with solutions in the European or African time zone and also in the kind of American continent time zone, you're not really going to compete, at least all the time, for resources. The capacity will be utilized well, and I can use your money and the other's money to have a much larger capacity, which means that you will have more resources available to you at any given time, more resources than what you are paying for. So this is truly my belief. After all these years working in premium, I don't believe personally in dedicated premium capacities to solutions. I'm not saying that I'm opposed to that. If there is a way in which we can demonstrate that it can be cost effective or it can be at least well utilized, or it's really needed because, look, Kasper, we're talking about extremely critical solution. We cannot have our users competing for resources and having the reports slowing down because of others. Well, fine, that's also a good reason to have a dedicated capacity.
Yeah.
But in essence, that's something that I don't believe in. So premium capacity is shared with different solutions. And in there is when we need to be very reactive. We need to monitor the health of the platform. We need to identify weird behavior. And it's funny because not only in premium, I've seen this in SQL Server analysis services, on-prem solutions like 3-4 years ago. A few users, a few skilled users or not users can dramatically affect the performance of your box. Obviously, it's not about telling them off, well, unless they are doing something wrong willingly and knowingly. It's about understanding what they need is and figuring out what's the best way in which they can meet that need, which is not going to hammer the premium capacity or the multidimensional queue. Because I mean I've seen this case in both technologies, and it's cases where users do massive downloads of data, where they can affect more, both different technologies. And there are always better ways to achieve the same goal that they have. So
But
that
again,
is
I mean,
managing.
I think it makes sense. But in your organization, you have a lot of pro licenses, so that makes a lot of sense. When you have an organization that is not doesn't have a lot of this pro license, then you have to strike a more of a balance between the premium and the pro licenses, obviously. So maybe another quick question. So you said so we had architecture, we had the platform / governance. Anything more?
Actually, two more areas. One is training and adoption. So always
Good.
we want to have more
These are actually
users.
my next two questions too, so that's good.
Okay. Now the thing is that adoption. So obviously, your organization is going to need always training, whether it is online training, offline training, some sort of support. I don't need to broadcast the benefits of Power BI as I needed 2 years ago because they are already now. It's kind of part of the common knowledge in our organization. So your training and your adoption over time might mean different things. You might meet the need in different ways. And it's also about understanding what does it mean for you adoption. I mean, today for me, adoption might not be to grow thousands of users every month because I might not be able to. I mean, I might not have physically thousands of users sitting idle, not using Power BI reports to start using them. But the quality of the reports, I mean, you can consider adoption as well, adopting guidelines and best practices. So those that are creating content for others, that content is higher quality. There is another angle on adoption is once you have, let's say, close to as much users as you can have, it's about, well, do they have everything that they need in Power BI? So intensity of usage is not the same having, I don't know, 1,000 users using Power BI once a day or once a week than using Power BI 5 times a day, 5 different reports. That means that Power BI is serving more than one need for those, and they're getting the value for different day operations.
Yeah, makes sense. So that's adoption and tracking adoption. What about actually helping gain adoption? Like you said, training. So training is about making things better. But how do you do you regularly do trainings? You go out in the field, and these days it's all Teams probably. You use Teams and you give training. So is there a cadence? Do you have some things set up that you do there?
I had at the moment I don't have anything planned as big as I had the last 6 months of last year. So basically, last year, due to migration from legacy tool to Power BI, just to complete that migration, we invested in training. We trained like 2,000 distinct users, and this was a quality training where we delivered 5 different sessions to teach them about Power BI desktop, Power BI service, Power Query, and data modeling. Because something that most of the normal business users don't know is that data modeling is critical for reporting. They think that they will invest all the time creating reports, creating visuals, dragging and dropping, and actually their problems are going to be solved in the data modeling phase. And we made an effort to make that clear and open. But at the moment, because we've done that, and that is, let's say, fresh, I wouldn't expect that if in these next 6 months, I do the same, I'm not going to have the same level of response because whoever wanted to be trained has already been trained. Mm-hmm. So that was a high effort. But perhaps from June or next year, I need to do a refresher because, you have joiners, you have leavers, you have people changing roles where they might need.
And what about new things like composite models will probably be like huge change.
So if Kasper, you are a very knowledgeable person in terms of SQL Server analysis services, Power BI. If you have a good training for composite models, I'm all ears I can invite you to train my organization and myself, because it's true. So composite models with direct query to tabular queues, that is unseen. That is something that we haven't ever seen in the business intelligence space. It's massive, but also it's very complicated. I mean, if I invested next 3 months in this alone, I could try many different things and learn and come up with some guidelines and best practices. But I think that is a huge thing, which is going to depend a lot on different models, different techniques, different use cases. You can have a technique which applied to one use case might be wonderful, and the same technique to a slightly different use case is going to be a non-starter. So it's difficult. In terms of new features, what we do is, because Power BI has every month plenty of new features or changes that can add value to the business, what we do is to broadcast in our Yammer community a short list of those, the ones that we believe are going to be more impactful to the business and are going to be adding more value. So we explain in that broadcast, we explain why we believe that those features are going to be more value adding, and how kind of a brief explanation of how to use them, just to give the context and the push for these content authors to start using those new features.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then, so about the community, do you actually do any building, or you have the Yammer? You were saying you have lots of people on there. You do any community building, or just people come themselves? I mean, and you kind of keep the conversation going. Can people ask questions there?
Absolutely. So I started this community, and this is funny. I'm obviously I'm not perfect. I made mistakes. I had wrong opinions, and actually I started this community because somebody told me to do so. As Alex, you don't have an option. You need to do this. I had other problems. I had other fighting to do at that point in time, and that was my least of my worries. But I needed to do it, so I did it. Obviously, if I do something, I try to do it well. So I started the community without really believing much in that it would yield benefits in the short term. But I was amazed because two things. One is the community grew really fast. I was like refreshing my Yammer page, just seeing newcomers. And second, we nurtured for the first few months quite carefully that community. So in that community, we always broadcast useful information. We answer everybody's questions. Not now, but we did. So we provide quality answers, not just a link, not just a yes or no, quality answer on their problems. And as time went on, we observed that the community started to be self-supporting. So when I was going to answer a question, somebody else was answering the question. But I still was nurturing the community, because if that question wasn't as good as I was going to answer, what I did is to complete that answer, just to make sure that the right knowledge is there. But obviously, always saying thanks for responding, and you are correct, but it is only one more addition. And one thing that I've always done in my Yammer community is to be honest, to be clear, to provide them with the information that they need. And whenever I don't support something, or I'm opposed to any behavior that you are suggesting, I'm clear. I can say, I don't support this. This is not something that I like. And these are the reasons. I mean, it's not, I don't have a hidden agenda. I try to protect you as a user or as a report author and everybody else and the platform. That is my duty. So that is where my thinking is. And when I take a decision, let's say I don't want you to use OPDG in this case, just to give you an example, I give my rationale. It's not a capricious decision. So being honest in all my responses, I think that builds the trust, the community in my person and in my center of excellence. I would say 6 months after I created this Yammer community, it was already self-supportive, and most of the, because you have plenty of very basic questions. Okay? People coming in, they have somebody doesn't know how to connect to a SharePoint folder. Most of us have done it, but if you are new, you might not have done it. So you ask that question, very basic, but you have somebody else from the community saying, well, look at this. And what I'm amazed is plenty of people that have a day job, which is not Power BI Java community, they frequently say, just book 30 minutes and I will walk you through.
Oh yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. All right. So that sounds really good. And maybe the next question is, so how do you measure success of the Center of Excellence?
Look, in my lowest moments, I measure success because, for the fact that I have not been fired. Keeping my job is already a personal success to me. Not just, I was saying it's a job. It's not really a job. In these 3 years, I faced lots of challenges. Technology, mindset, my own challenges in my own team, not being the right size at times for the demand that we had. Because one thing that it kind of worried me for quite some time is you have your resources, you have your objectives, you know that to support your platform and your community and developments, either business or service or IT, there are a number of things that you need to do. So you plan your work. Then all of a sudden, somebody says, I'm releasing this solution tomorrow, I'm facing this problem, and you need to drop everything to attend them. Obviously, it's also in your own interest that they are successful because their success is my success. But there is still plenty of stuff that I'm not doing. And there were periods in which such demand of firefighting things was too much. In my lowest moments, I had to kind of give myself some sort of consolation, say, well, I still have a job. So I might be doing something well. Just leaving that aside, measuring success for the Power BI Center of Excellence and the Power BI platform, it's not that easy. You can always take those, objective metrics. Number of users. How many users am I growing every month? Number of reports. How many reports are being used every month? How many report visits do you have every month? How is it growing? And obviously, they are a representation. They are a measure of adoption. Now, if I say this adoption is because of the Center of Excellence, anyone can challenge you and can say, well, how can you demonstrate that what you have done has a direct relation to the growth? Couldn't that growth happen on its own because we know the Power BI is a great tool and there is plenty of educational material outside there? And that is always obviously a challenge. Now, the other side is when you have objectives in your Power BI Center of Excellence, helping others, helping IT solutions, there is these kind of qualitative measures where you can say, you can actually list all the things that you've done in a year and explain what's the impact to the business. And I think I've been much more successful kind of telling the story of my success, my Power BI Center of Excellence success, based on those quality measures rather than objective measures. Objective measures have always been good, and you can always take some credit and say, well, if I wasn't there and my team wasn't supporting the business and giving training, keeping the platform healthy and stable, this growth would have not been what it was. But yeah, I would say that really listening and explaining how high you delivered value to the organization in more qualitative than quantitative metrics has been more important.
That sounds like good advice. Yeah. So maybe the last question, because we're already running out of time, we can talk about this for long hours and hours, but I just want to tailor it down a little bit. So let's say I'm a new company, right? And I'm planning to roll out Power BI to my organization. What advice would you give them?
Good. Well, a few things. Rolling. So the first thing that you need to understand is rolling Power BI is implies a change in mindset most of the time. So the first thing that I would suggest is decide or think about what is the value that you want to deliver with Power BI. So is it because you want to have a self-service community? Well, then focus on that. Is it because you want to have quality IT developments? Let's focus on you might want to have both, but at least you need to decide how you are going to deliver value with the technology to your organization. Although I would not be close to understanding new opportunities because, well, in larger organizations where you have plenty of users, they are going to discover different ways of adding value using the technology that you have not even thought about. And that is really refreshing. And obviously you need to be open to that and harness opportunities if they present themselves. Not deviating from your plan, or actually just changing your plan if you think that there is a better opportunity than what you thought before. So I would say that my first advice is think about how you want to add value. The other one is to choose your timing wisely. There might be certain periods in which you don't want to make this business change, or there might be opportunities that you want to use to kind of to force this business change. Mainly when it comes to replace legacy tools. If you aim to have Power BI as your sole reporting tool, timing is even more important. And what I would do in that case is roll out Power BI, and when there is a kind of a critical mass of users and usage, and there is a good momentum in adoption, then you can think about in decommissioning other legacy tools. Otherwise, the resilience that you are going to find is just too much. You are going to ask people to stop using what they are using, which is serving them well, because of a new tool, which in paper looks good, but they have not seen the benefits of that tool in the organization. Timing is really important. Timing is really important.
The majority of the companies have a BI solution today. Like that's just the way it is.
Yeah. One more thing that I would suggest is what we discussed before is sponsorship. So gaining sponsorship is important. However, the kind of people that you need to convince, they have every week some software company knocking on their door to demonstrate the beauties of their software, whether it's business intelligence or not. And they are used to that. They are not easily impressed. Obviously, Power BI sells on its own, but you're going to impress them on paper. If alongside that, you have already worked with some niche groups and they have delivered awesome value to the organization, you can say to your execs, well, look, this is on paper. What you can do with Power BI, you can do A, B, and C. And yes, as a proof of that, these teams with this budget or this number of resources have created solutions in Power BI that they didn't have before, or they could have before, but they needed to invest a lot of time to kind of get their reporting every month. And actually, I've seen that, and it's really powerful to demonstrate and to gain that sponsorship support. So I would say you need to work in both areas at the same time and make sure that they understand what is happening on the other side. As soon as there is an exec supporting Power BI, your users need to know. And as soon as you have a success from your users, you need to make sure that your execs know about that.
Yeah, so it's not about the DAX, but about the politics. Or not the politics, but the people being able to understand each other and making sure you pick the right moments to roll out this product and show the value.
So look, we tend to talk about politics in organizations, but I would say that most of the time is about psychology. For you, it's much easier to do something if you know that all your colleagues are doing that and are happier because they are doing that. It's just psychology.
Yeah, makes sense. It's a better word for sure, yes.
Than politics, although
politics has a negative name.
Exactly. Has a negative connotation.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. I think we are about time. I think this was really useful. It was really interesting discussions, a lot of great value. Alex, I want to really thank you for your time, to spend an hour of your evening to talk to me about Center of Excellence and Power BI. So I really appreciate it. And thank you.
Well, thank you, Kasper. Thank you for having me here. It's always really exciting to talk about Power BI. It's always really exciting to talk to Kasper de Jong, and having both things together, well, even more exciting. So thank you, mate.
Exactly.
It's been a pleasure anytime.
Thank you, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks.
We will. Thank you.
And that concludes another episode of Kasper On BI. I think it was a really good conversation, learning about Center of Excellence, tips and tricks of things that you want to do. If you like this episode, please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel to hear about all the amazing upcoming podcasts and episodes that are coming. As I mentioned before, it is available on YouTube, but it's also available on your favorite podcast channel to listen to you when you're on the go, in the car, and so forth. So with that, thank you for joining today, and I hope to see you next time.